Gators Breakdown, the Gators fan podcast, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC, and joining you guys right after the Dan Mullen speaking engagement here in Jacksonville, put on by the Jacksonville Gator Club. And Dan Mullen making his way to Jacksonville and talking to Gator fans, and hey, even talk to us media folk. if you want to put me on that label, if you want to put me in that category, I guess half and half. I'm still fan and media member all at the same time, but fan first, and of course that's always kind of the first part of this podcast is being a fan. But did get to speak to Dan Mullen in a media room before he spoke to the crowd here in Jacksonville at the Gator Gathering put on by the Jacksonville Gator Club. Thanks to those guys. It was a really great event put on by them. And, Dan Mullen enjoyed himself. We got to talk with him a little bit, like as I said, those media members. And I'll share the interview, the uncut that we got from Dan Mullen here. And also, just some more insight on what he was able to say to the crowd and some questions taken from the crowd. I'll hit on a lot of those highlights there. But before we do, remember you can find Gators Breakdown on news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown. You'll find all the Gators Breakdown episodes, as well as articles from the News for Jack sports team, even an article pertaining to Dan Mullen being in Jacksonville from Brian Jackson of the News for Jack sports team. Really good insight article there from stuff you'll hear here, and also just a little bit more there. But you can find it on news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown. Also, catch us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Spotify. And using those services, please share, rate, and review the show. You can go back this week and catch the episode with Thomas Goldcamp of Swap 24/7, kind of taking a look back at the first week of spring practice and, well, maybe what we can look forward to coming up as well. And be sure to follow Gators Breakdown on social media, on Twitter and Facebook at Gators Breakdown. So as I said, we've got media members from around the Jacksonville area got to speak with Coach Dan Mullen, and I will play that interview for you uncut right here on Gators Breakdown. It's kind of the first time we've been able to do it that way. I remember going back, SEC Media Days, kind of done some things similar to this, but with events like this where we can get to talk to Dan Mullen as a media member like this, I'll share the highlights and all that good stuff. But here it is, Dan Mullen uncut before he went to go speak to Gator fans in Jacksonville.
How much easier is this year's spring practice when you don't have to take the time to teach them a new language, in other words, your system? How much smoother is it going?
Well, I think just going out there practice, you can get a lot more done because you guys understand what and expect or know what the expectations of practice are. When they can go out there on the field. And they know that they are, whether from walk through to stretch to what our different individual drills are to what the tempo we expect practice to be, as much as knowing the offense and the defense of everything that's happening out there on the field, within the kicking game within the system. So it's you're able to get a lot more accomplished.
Does that follow with the quarterbacks especially?
Well, I don't know, just every position.
Can you devote more time with the quarterbacks to a lot more subtleties and intricacies?
Yeah, well, because we expect them to know a lot more, you know what I mean, of coming out, and it's it's not their first time going through it, so we expect a lot more out of them. And you can get to more advanced things, you can take your time teaching it and teaching a little bit more advanced stuff, whether how fast you're making decisions, the quickness you make decisions, making sure you're managing the game, and it's really using the scheme to make plays. You know what I mean? As you continue to grow, and sometimes it takes a couple of years, but as you continue to grow as a player, you can use the scheme to go make plays because you know what's going to happen before it happens.
There's a lot of experience on the offense, except for the offensive line. They're surrounded by experience. So is there a different approach with those guys with the experience that's around them?
No, a lot of the time, I install at the pace of the quarterbacks. If the quarterbacks can check us and get us into the right plays, we're going at that speed, and the line's got to catch up. So, but there are a lot of young players on the O-line, a lot of young guys getting opportunities. And, I think when you get that, if you're a young player and you're forced into a situation where you have to get a lot of reps and have to play, you start to see yourself improve a lot quicker.
Did you see yesterday Miami's Tate Martell got cleared, and do you think that rule is eventually going to disappear, having to sit out for a year?
I have no idea how it's all going to go. I have no problem for guys that are I have no idea why he transferred. To be honest with you, I just saw a headline that he was eligible, but most of our guys that have transferred, I've had no problem trying to help them get eligible or be eligible right away, because every guy that's really that I've had transferred has left for the right reasons, and so there's specific reasons they're leaving for. So I have no ill will to prevent them from playing.
How important is recruiting Jacksonville? It's in your backyard, and coming in here and being able to own the city.
Well, it's huge. I mean, you look at all the great Gators that have come from Jacksonville, and through the years, there's a lot of great players in this area. There always have been. There always will be. And and you look at the success they have. And I mean, if you're, I certainly hope. I mean, if you're a young kid growing up in Jacksonville, you want to play at the University of Florida. I mean, you want to go be part of the Gator Nation if you get that opportunity, because not just while you're in college playing for them, but I mean it's a life-changing deal to be part of the university, and you look at the Gator Nation. There's no stronger brand in Jacksonville than being a Florida Gator, and so I think for the young men, that opportunity, not just as players but for the rest of their lives, is pretty special.
How would you assess recruiting so far this offseason, since it's the first real full offseason that you've had?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. For us, I don't know. I assess recruiting a couple years down the road. I always have, because you got to make sure you're getting guys with great character and the right work ethic, and because those type of guys continue to grow, to continue to develop, and recruiting is not about what guys are like on signing day. Recruiting for us is more like what guys are like on graduation day. That's when we find out if we've recruited the right guys and we've developed them the right way, and our guys work hard at it every single day.
Is communication between you and your recruits and their coaches a little bit different this time around, now that you're coming off that year of success, as opposed to a little bit of an unknown?
Well, I think they get to see what we're able to do, but I mean, it's not like I was a first-time head coach. You know what I mean? So I think guys that really look at what the programs we're able to build, and the players I've been able to develop as a head coach. I think there was a lot of that you can show proof. It's not, hey, this is our vision, and there's no, proof behind it. I think there was proof before I came to Florida, but I think especially after a year when you finish, right? I mean, number 16 ranked team in the country, second highest ranked team in the SEC. I think they can look at that and say, okay, now, I knew what you did before at other schools as a head coach and how you developed, how you built a program, and I can see how it translates to the University of Florida and how we're going to compete in the future.
Coach, first time since 2016, the defensive coordinator has returned to Florida, and with all the production and the leadership
That's a good deal.
that you lost with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Deshaun Jackson, Polite, how key was it with that grand return?
It's always great having, you look, Todd's one of the best defense coordinators in America. That's why, a lot of colleges came after him, a lot of NFL teams came after him. And it's great to have him, stay on board, believe in what we're doing, and obviously, I think it helps us as the continuity on the defensive side of the ball for the players, for the coaching staff, and to have such a quality coach on our staff is certainly a huge benefit.
A hot topic this spring ball has been the pads versus no pads. Can you elaborate on your stance on that?
In what way? Of whether you should always be in pads?
Yeah.
Well, we lost a great player because they won't let us have pads. He fell over and hurt a shoulder, and it's going to hurt his development. So I'm a big believer. There's no one that has the safety of our players that has a bigger interest in that than I do. There's not a person in the country. There's not a doctor. There's not a medical specialist. There's nobody in America that has the safety of our players, a greater interest in the safety of our players than I do. And so it's a shame to see that they create rules that, end up, a guy ends up, it can hurt his career a little bit because they mandate that he's in an unsafe situation.
You bring back Keelan Ratliff to the staff.
Mm-hmm.
Always important to bring back the alumni, not only to talk to the guys, but as a coach, how helpful is that to have him as part of your staff?
Well, you look at some of the guys that are former players on our staff. One, obviously you want guys that want to be in the profession and do what we're going to ask them to do. But also there's a certain pride those guys have in being Gators and being part of the university. And so I think it is special when those guys come back and it's more than a job. I mean, they're part of the Gator family, and it's deep in their blood of who they are. So it's great having those type of guys on the staff, and having Kiwan on the staff. And we have a couple other guys that are like that on the staff.
Dan, you knew you were having Miami first, but now that the game has been moved a week earlier, and you're the first game of the season, has that translated any additional excitement of the kids in getting ready for spring, or do you think that'll happen when you come back?
I don't know. I don't know if it's changed a whole lot. I mean, I think there was for our guys that it's still the first game. It's not like it's been moved from a different part of the season. It's game one. It just happens a week earlier. I think as the excitement goes, right now our guys, they're focused on spring and academics. But as it gets closer, I think obviously the one thing you got to see is the excitement around the game itself. Not just, it was already a big game, but now it's really the kickoff game of the 150th season of college football. So it's such a special deal that the excitement around that game will certainly build as it gets closer. And so that'll be a lot of fun.
Do you find that having a game like that at the beginning of the season sharpens the focus when you come back?
We'll see. I think it can, but I think also there's so much in training camp, in us. We have different goals, and there's different phases of training camp. And, when we get into training camp, you're not worried about that game. You're worried about the development and installation and getting things we need done for a long season. Now at the back end of it, then you start transitioning really. You have your training camp mode, your transition mode, and then game week mode. And, I think at that back part of it, having a big game will certainly, get everybody's attention into when we get through the transition into game week.
How would you compare pressure to win last year versus pressure to win going into this year?
From me personally, it doesn't change. I put a lot of pressure on myself to win. I expect to win all the time, and we're always putting pressure on ourselves to win. Outside of the program, I don't know, that's not something I pay a lot of attention to because, people are like, boy, last year there might not a lot have been pressure on us to win. Well, there wasn't coming from my office. And, this year there's going to be more pressure to win. Well, not any more than last year or less than last year coming from my office. So it's for us within the program, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I would imagine there's a lot more expectations from the Gator Nation out there after having success last year of the direction the program's headed.
Coach, Slayton and Conlon kind of fell off after starting last season. But
Yeah.
Schuler and Campbell kind of come in and fill in for those. Conlon and Slayton, those guys showing more this spring?
Well, they need to. If we want to be successful, you want to have a success, you got to have depth, especially up front defensively to be able to rotate players. So, for us, us to have a successful year, those are guys that are going to have to step up and play up to the Gator standard. And that's playing not just with flashes. That's a consistent performance and consistent excellence. And so it's a big deal. And I know Coach Turner's working real hard with them. And they got to have that personal drive also to go perform at that level.
How are the guys taking to him so far?
I think they're done pretty well. I've only had a couple practices. We want to see. I know. David's a great coach, great football coach. Has developed a lot of great players, a lot of guys in the NFL, and and has great experience understanding what my expectations in the program are. So, we're excited with what he can do and how he's going to be able to develop these guys.
Coach, at low stress events like this, what are questions you get asked the most from the fans, and do you like interacting with the guests like this?
Yeah, well, I guess public speaking in front of a large groups of people, a lot of people might not think that's low stress, right? Obviously, for all the celebrity TV personalities in the room, whether you guys find that low stress. But no, you know what? This is our opportunity to come thank all the Gator Nation. We spend so much of our time asking them to come to Gainesville and support the team. Come to games, support the team, all of these things. This is our opportunity for us to come to visit them and thank them at their hometown for all the support they give us. And I get every type of question. I make sure we try to, let everybody ask whatever type of questions they want. And, and I try to give them the best answers. You probably put me on the spot, and I won't be able to think of it right now because, in the middle of spring ball, I got a lot on my mind right now of, like, what's the best question you've ever been answered. But I'm sure you guys all welcome to stick around, and you might hear some off-the-wall ones.
Coach, top 10 matchup last year, Florida, Georgia here in town, and recruiting battles off the field now. Rivalry just in general been ratcheted up in your short time here?
Yeah, I guess. I was here before, and it was a pretty big rivalry when I was here before. So, I guess it'd be a tragedy if it seems like people say it fell off in the 9 years I was gone, because it's one of the great rivalries in all of college football. And, you come over that bridge into Jacksonville for the Florida-Georgia game, and you just see the people everywhere. It's one of the games that make college football special. So, I'm glad everybody I guess everybody perceives that it's back to where it should be.
How are you having as much fun watching Spurrier coach as we are?
I do. I try to catch the games. Obviously, with that, I've watched a bunch of them. When I've been able to. I know my son's 10. He's a big Apollos fan. So, one being our team in Florida, and and obviously with Coach Spurrier there and a lot of Gators on the team, it certainly helps. So, he looks like he's having fun, and I think that's what's really important.
What do you think of him coaching in the snow?
Yeah, you know what? That was one game I didn't see. I saw some of the highlights, but I'm going to bet that was an experience for him that he, in the NFL, I'm sure he got a couple in, but there hasn't been a whole lot of snow games that he's coached in.
You got Missouri late November, kind of big.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, that's why they every year they got like a big parka jacket, right? That generally only gets used in recruiting if we have to go way up north somewhere, but might have to make it broken out during the season this year.
No forward.
Are you back in the area next week for the Tebow golf tournament?
Yeah, I plan on being here. I think that's a great event, and obviously, that's one of the things when you look at what it means to be a Gator and be from Jacksonville. Tebow's a pretty big guy, but his biggest event of the year is held here in Jacksonville. That's because that's where he's from, and it's probably because he went to Florida. I guess if he had gone somewhere else, who knows where it would be located. But I think it's such a big deal, and it's a lot of fun. If people haven't been to it, it's open, right? They open it to the public. You can come sit on 17 and harass all of us. That certainly won't be as good as the guys last week on 17, even though, heck, Tiger put 2 in the water, right, didn't he? So I'm not going to feel as bad on 17 this year.
Did you beat Tebow?
In golf?
Yeah.
I don't ever get to matched up with him, but I'll say definitely, right? I'll certainly get him in my group, I bet, if I say that, won't it?
There it is, Dan Mullen speaking to us media members here in Jacksonville. A lot of good insight, a lot of good stuff from Coach. I even got to kind of speak to him after the fact as well, and kind of a more relaxed setting, and how he kept on extending about how he likes to play golf with Tebow in Tebow's event here in Jacksonville. He'll be back next week playing in Tebow's golf tournament at Sawgrass and all that good stuff. So even kind of a personal level as well as. Hey, Jacksonville Gator fans got to see as well when Dan Mullen took the stage here, and just some highlights of the event. First of all, Steve Spurrier was in town as well and introduced Coach Mullen after Willie Jackson and Lito Shepherd took the stage as well, kind of hyping up the Orlando Apollos as well. But Steve Spurrier came on the field, and I tell you what, it was some really good stuff by Coach Spurrier there introducing Dan Mullen. Said Dan Mullen would be the winningest coach in Florida history before it was all said and done, and the Nolies are in the dumps, is what Spurrier said, talking about the Seminoles not living up to expectations right now. But Spurrier with the quip, Spurrier had the crowd going and laughing, but it was a really great introduction there to get Dan Mullen up on the stage. And then a highlight video played to get the fans all riled up in attendance here, and season highlights from last season, and kind of culminated with a kind of a long highlight look at the Peach Bowl win over Michigan. Look, that really got all the fans excited here at this Gator gathering, and it's kind of when I tweeted this it's on fire at that time, and I was sitting with Daniel, a good friend and Twitter follower, listener of Gators Breakdown, was sitting beside him, and it was fun. You could tell there was a lot of excitement in the air, a lot of excitement that the crowd was getting ready to go as well. So a lot to look forward to as Dan Mullen hit the stage. And Dan Mullen hit the stage kind of early on, talking about Florida being the premier school in the SEC, a top 10 public university, and a team that finished top 10 in the college football rankings at the end of last season. And that's what it means. That's the Gator standard Dan Mullen talks about here. And now it goes on to say how he's proud to be the coach at the University of Florida, and why he coaches. He loves to coach, and why do you do what you want to do? And he answered that question for himself, is to have a positive impact on young people's lives. And, we can see it. You go back to that Peach Bowl and Deontay Lewis, and I know I spoke about this a couple weeks ago, but, Deontay Lewis after the game in that Peach Bowl and coming back for him as a senior, and, he wasn't even sure he wanted to play football after Jim McElwain got fired and the terrible 4-7 season. He wasn't even sure if he wanted to play football, and he gave a speech after the Peach Bowl thanking Coach Mullen for bringing back the Gator standard and kind of holding players accountable for themselves. And look, it really spoke to a senior like Deontay Lewis, and he made it known that to the rest of the locker room there, that how much Dan Mullen meant to him and how much he meant to the team and the seniors there. So, Dan Mullen talks about wanting to be or having a positive impact on young people's lives. And we've seen that from his time here in Gainesville, and I think we'll see it even more. And he goes on to discuss, the vision the vision for the University of Florida under him right now, and it's to compete for championships every single year, every single season. And how does he get there? And Mullen says it starts with accountability to themselves first. All the players have to hold themselves accountable to themselves first, and then to your teammates. And then once you get to those points, then you can hold accountability from your teammates. And once you trust in yourself, then you can trust in others. And that trust comes from that. Being able to look at your teammates and you can really see it. And I keep going back to this, and another part of accountability here is look at all the lack of off-field trouble that we've seen since Dan Mullen has taken over at Florida. Going back, and besides the whole Tebow frying pan incident before the season last year, there's just not you don't hear a lot of those off-field issues and troubles that we were used to hearing under previous coaching staff. So it is definitely a stark contrast from what we saw before and being accountable to yourselves and to your teammates. And one thing that I liked a whole lot, and it got a rise out of the crowd as well, is you win, you get a trophy. There's no participation trophies here. You win, you get a trophy. It's that cut and dry. You want the ultimate prize, you got to go win. Nothing, no participation trophies about it. Go out there, win some ball games, you'll get a trophy. And then, of course, Mullen went on to kind of extend the whole relentless effort mantra. And we know that. When he was hired, that was the key phrase. That's the key mantra. And, hey, look, he even says you might get 15 opportunities a year. So reach your potential every day. Be better in the last game of the season than the first game of the season. Play with passion. And we saw that. We saw that last year. We saw when this team, after having to bounce back from Kentucky and go and pound Tennessee, and then go get an emotional victory against Mississippi State, and then the very next week come back home and the crowd's crazy in the swamp for LSU, and really helped to a victory. And we saw that, and being able to bounce back from a midseason funk and then end the season on a high note between FSU and Michigan. And so it really does speak to the reaching potential. Get better week by week. You may lose some games along the way, but get better week by week. When the season ends, you might become a 10-win team like last year, and then you got your sights set on even bigger things. But Mullen, he went back kind of to a theme and point last year too, and bringing back excitement to Gainesville. And I think the fan that asked him the question was him bringing back excitement, but he turned it around, and he wanted to thank the fans for helping also bringing back the excitement to the Swamp and showing up to games. And he had a nice joke about how important the fan base was for the LSU game, and how it was the most raucous crowd of the season, and you couldn't find a seat. And then jokes about were those same fans at the Missouri game? And he says he was, but were a lot of those same fans at the Missouri game when the team come out flat, couldn't get it going, and end up losing that game. But it was a joke of how exciting the Swamp can be for an LSU game. Then you turn around and you have a Missouri game, and the outcome of that game. Of course, he's not putting it all on the fan base of why Florida lost to Missouri, but I think he is right to a point where the way the crowd was, the way the craziness was for the LSU game, it did have an impact on that game, and he does stress that you can make a difference. Go to the Swamp, fill the Swamp. You can make a difference in these a lot of these games that the Gators play here. So he's thanking for all the support, and he does that. He does these engagements, these speaking engagements for the fans to thank the fans. And then some more things about on the field, and particular players, particular position groupings here. And he was asked about Kadarius Toney, and look, it was like pretty much the question straightforward was, can we get Kadarius Toney the ball more? And Mullen says he's still learning to be a wide receiver. Learn the nuances of being a wide receiver, beat coverage, learn how to beat press coverage. Those are things that he was a quarterback in high school. He doesn't have a lot of experience at wide receiver, and it was kind of funny. He did admit that Kadarius Toney is a very exciting player and has exciting plays. The play may not be good, but it's going to be very exciting. But he is working hard to become a all-around receiver, become an overall receiver, and not just a flash in the pan or whatever. Got beat coverage, go downfield, get up and catch a pass at its high point, learn how to be a receiver. And then if Kadarius Toney can do that, it will be even more of a weapon in this Gators offense. And asked about the offensive line coming along, and he did say, quote, fortunately, we don't have to play for a while. So it is. You heard him in the interview earlier when he was discussing the offensive line about the standard and the expectations about advancing as a group. These guys have no choice in having to and living up to that standard. But he did mention they have to stay healthy, and they may be looking in the grad transfer market as well to help shore up that. But much like last year, and a lot of what led to success of the offensive line and the offense in general was that offensive line staying healthy, and those same starting five being in for most of the games there. So it's kind of the first time as well since Chuck Heater has been hired that we got to hear from Dan Mullen, and I really like what Dan Mullen had to say and what they're doing with Chuck Heater being back on staff in Gainesville. And Mullen says he gives a different perspective. And it's unique what they're doing with him because they're having Chuck Heater work with the offense to give them a defensive perspective. He has a lot of experience, and he's doing a lot of great quality control work for the Gators right now, but he's working with the offense to show, hey, this is what this defense may do here. This is what you can see this defense do. He's scouting defenses that the Gators will play for the offensive side of the ball. So he's working with the offense, giving them a defensive perspective. And, while we knew the quality control role was going to be tagged to Heater, I don't think we necessarily knew until now how that may shake out. So I kind of like, I really like what they're doing with Heater. A lot of experience bringing in back to this room. He was previous on the Florida staff. Really helped recruit those 2006, 2007 classes. And what they're bringing him in here to do now is pretty unique in helping this offense take that next step. Help Mullen, help those players learn what some defenses in the SEC and around the country are going to be throwing at this Gators offense. Another quote that I really liked from Mullen, and it was more about what did he do in year one to help the turnaround there. And he says, quote, "I don't care how they did it before, our way works." And he's discussing and talking about players weren't ready or prepared for the change last year, Mullen says. And basically saying our vision is the best and it has proof of working. So trust us, follow us, and we'll get you where you need to be. And we definitely saw that last year. Also, another thing brought up here was trying to make coaches stick around, and the question was more in particular to getting Nick Savage, maybe a raise or whatever. The fan base loves some Nick Savage out there, no doubt about it. In all the videos, we saw the transformation of this team. We saw what that transformation was able to do in a turnaround to get 10 wins last season, and Mullen did say they're trying to make coaches stick around and in getting pay raises, getting extensions in contracts, and this was a discussion about Savage and keeping him around, but it was also to point out they're constantly working on paying coaches, but the facilities as well. And he did admit that the pay and the facilities are and especially the facilities are well below kind of the average that you see out there. But we've seen the plans, and we do know they're working on fixing that. And it's going to be built for long-term success. Can they put something up right now in the blink of an eye? Maybe, but are you doing it the right way? Will it be outdated in a year or so already? We know there's some delays in some of the football complex construction to do with the baseball stadium being torn down and a new football facility complex being built. That's just unfortunate that is being delayed, but not much really Florida can do about that as costs rise at that. But they're going to do it the right way. They're going to make sure they do it the right way and not rush it. So one of my favorite kind of quips and jokes from the night is Mullen jokes his son asked, why would he go to Florida when they only won 4 games? And this was, of course, when Mullen was discussing about him and his wife in the coaching profession, and also kind of just taking the Florida job. And we know Tennessee was after Mullen right after they, where they were looking for a new coach as well, about the same time Florida was, and it maybe looked like he was going to go to Tennessee if Florida didn't jump in around that Thanksgiving weekend. And they were talking, and his wife knew once Florida called that they were going, and he was going to explain it to his son. And why would we go to Florida when they only won 4 games? So later on in the story, Mullen hands his son his national championship rings that he says he can finally wear because talking about Gators and not being at Mississippi State. But Mullen hands his son national championship rings, and his son changes his tune as Mullen says, quote, "We're going to win more." So his son was fully on board. We're going to go get some more rings that they can win national championships at the University of Florida with a better chance than what they could do at Mississippi State. Or he did say, his son said, "Why can't we go to Clemson?" Well, okay, we know that, but 8, 9, 10-year-old kid may not understand that. But it was a good little story there, I thought, and one of the other aspects of Dan Mullen getting the job at the University of Florida. And one of the last thoughts in the night, and kind of going back to on-field things, was the flexibility in how to win games. And I really like this too, because it was stuck in my mind a little bit as well, because I think it was just because I saw a highlight of the Florida-Oklahoma national championship game that Mullen was offensive coordinator for as well. His last game as offensive coordinator at Florida. And Mullen says you got to have, and he was talking about this year's team and what they can do now. And they have to be flexible. And mentioned that holding Oklahoma well below their average while scoring well below their average, but that's what it took. That they needed to win that game. 24-14. Oklahoma scoring 60 points a game going into that game. But Florida slowed the game down. Needed to slow the game down. Rely on their defense a little bit more. And that's what they were able to do. And he says that's what they'll be able to do this year. If they need to run the ball and help their defense out, they'll have the flexibility to do that. If they need to go out there and score points and put points on the board, they need to be able to do that. And that's how Mullen wants to build this team. So that's kind of it. Kind of a summary of a lot of the things Dan Mullen was asked about, discussed about in Jacksonville at the Jacksonville Gator Club Gator Gathering. A lot of fun meeting a lot of listeners, a lot of Gator Breakdown listeners. I got to see, like I said, sat beside Daniel during the whole event. Tony Aguilini as well, got to see and talk with him a little bit. Dustin Woolbright, got to see him before I scooted out of there. But a lot more listeners out there as well. Thanks for telling me, hey, I'm sorry, I can't remember all the names. Not trying to maybe a humble brag a little bit, but not trying to forget anybody, ignore anybody. Just thanks for all the listens. Nice to meet a whole lot of you in person. Glad you can make it out to this thing in Jacksonville where we were able to get together. Hey, we even did a We Are the Boys after Mullen left the stage, so that was a lot of fun as well. So remember, 9:45 this Saturday morning is the open practice in Gainesville, open football practice. Hope to see a lot of you out there as well. If I didn't get to see you in Jacksonville, I'll be looking for you at the open practice as well. So if you see me, stop and say hey. Don't be shy. Like to meet the people who really support what we do here on Gators Breakdown. So probably next Monday will be the next episode. After that, you'll get my thoughts from open practice and what the Gators are doing there. And probably next Monday night, Will Miles and I will kind of take a look there. So thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown. We're kind of had a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun tonight. Not kind of. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed getting to talk with Dan Mullen a little bit and all the stories that he got to share to all these Jacksonville Gator fans around there. So I'm the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SCC. Guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.